Okay. Hi, welcome to the Business 611 Leadership Interview. Thanks for coming. You were asked to participate in this interview because of your proven track record of excellent leadership. So today we'll discuss many aspects of leadership, but before we get started, I'd like you to introduce yourself and just kind of give us a brief rundown of your previous leadership experience.
I'd be happy to do that, Joey. So I've been here at Special Metals 24 years, and I've held various leadership positions in sales, operations, laboratory management, um, general management. Currently, I'm the director of raw materials.
Quite the list. Okay, so we'll look into a couple aspects of leadership as we get started. I like to first start with leadership as defined by a leader or yourself. So, what skills do you believe pervade all forms and roles of leadership, whether it's small business owners, corporate leaders such as yourself, military commanders, or politicians?
Well, I think that because change happens at organizations through people, it's first of all extremely important that you have good verbal skills because you have to take your vision of change and communicate that with people, which normally you'll do face to face, both small and large groups. So, good communication skills, I think, are very important. Having good ability to for complex reasoning is important too, because if we're talking about a significant change, I think you need to be very thoughtful about the direction you're leading an organization. You oftentimes are asking people to do things that are difficult, things that have financial implications for a corporation. And I believe that to enlist people support, they need to feel confident that you've thought through this and it's sound. There's nothing that will lose a leadership's ability to transform a company as if people don't trust you and if they think that you don't have sound reasoning behind what you're trying to do, that's a problem. So I would say ability for complex thought, clear verbal communication, those are two keys.
Wonderful. So, I absolutely agree. As you mentioned, in a well-rounded organization, most of those traits are probably developed at some point in their career. I feel that they're probably developed in entry-level positions when employees start out as followers, and then they're probably developed through management. How has your time as a follower or entry-level positions influenced your leadership style today?
I would say that I've seen how general managers stand up in front of groups, how they command the room, how they try to present the data in a way that is complicated enough to get the point across, but not overly complicated. Um, I've I've seen how important it is that there be a democratic tone to things. Although there comes a time when people have to make decisions, I think you're best off in creating change if you try to enlist people's opinions and their support and explain to them as clearly as you can why you're asking them to do the things you want to do and why the change that you're advocating is good for the organization.
That's wonderful. So, kind of piggybacking off that, um, so as you progressed from a follower to a manager, how has your time in management affected your leadership style?
Well, I've been in general management several different times, and I will say my early foray into that, there were times when uh, I tried too much to emulate my boss, and I realized over time that you really have to be authentic, which in some ways is an overused term, but it's true. People will see through if you're trying to emulate your boss who's a little bit more aggressive and confrontational if that's not your style. So you have to find a style that works for you that you can identify with and feel comfortable with.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from that, originality is key.
I agree. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then, looking at both of those times, do you feel that the follower position has influenced your leadership style more, or the management position?
Well, I think both, because in following, you see what works for people and what doesn't work. And equally, if you're reflective, you can see what things you've tried to do that really haven't turned out that well, and other things that you've tried that have worked well and allow you to achieve the goals that you want to achieve.
So based on all that, would you say that you must be a follower and a manager before becoming a leader?
I believe so. I believe so. But leadership comes in all different levels. You can be a leadership in a small organization, and that may be a little bit easier to do without a diverse background. But when you're talking about a big organization, the higher up you go, the more significant the change, the larger number of people you're trying to impact, the more your background and the skills that you've developed become more important.
Okay, that's wonderful thoughts. I think we have a clear vision of what leadership is to you and a little bit the takeaways for us when we try to develop into leaders ourselves. So on the next topic, I'd like to talk about leadership and the power of motivation and influence. I think we touched on it a little bit as far as what you said earlier, motivating people toward your goal, your vision. So influence probably is one of the most critical aspects of leadership. Can you explain your style of influence and techniques that you employ to lead your constituents?
Well, I think I would probably best say it's participative. Um, and as I touched on earlier, I think it's important to explain to people and to get them to buy in. Part of that is to ask for their opinions and their insight, because nobody knows it all. If you're inquisitive, you listen to people. At the end of the day, you have to make decisions, and in any team, there'll be diverse perspectives, people that which are welcomed. But you have to, at the end of the day, be the person to make the decision. But you will be more effective if you listen to people's points of view and discuss why those points of view may be consistent with what you're trying to do or not consistent with what you're trying to do. I also think that setting good example is important too, and not asking people to do anything you wouldn't ask them to do. If you expect them to work hard, then you need to show that you're going to work hard. If you're, I think it's also important to be to create trust with people, and you create trust by being honest with them and open.
Okay, so I see that your effective leadership style is more participative, team oriented. That's great. So motivating and influencing the masses is important, as you touched on. However, I would suspect motivating future leaders is equally important. So how do you go about and help and motivate and develop less experienced leaders?
Well, I think one approach is to exhibit the to let them see you in different situations and to model behaviors. Um, I think that's important. It's one thing to describe to people how they should act, but it's also more effective, I think, to have people see what you're trying to do, and to model those behaviors in real world situations.
Right. Yeah, a lot of us are visual learners, so I can definitely relate to that. So one of the most difficult skills to master for those upcoming leaders that we talked about is how to manage and motivate constituents toward a common goal or organizational objectives. Sometimes they can be more or less aggressive. How do you build team confidence and optimism, like we talked about earlier, in the face of these aggressive goals?
Well, I think there's nothing like being optimistic, and you need to be able to project to people that there is a way to accomplish the goals. They may seem very difficult, but if you don't, first of all, say, project to them that you're confident that you can be successful, they're not going to feel that they can be confident. Um, you don't want them to think it's just an activity that is impossible to achieve. They need to know that you feel like it can be done and you've got the right team to do it. If you all work together, you'll get to that goal.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I know sometimes it may be hard to continue that momentum, right? To achieve those goals. So not only for the followers, but for you yourself. So a little bit more into you and as far as motivation. What really gets you motivated every day to wake up and continually push and motivate others?
Well, for me, you have to enjoy what you're doing and the people you're working with. There has to be a certain amount of resiliency because there are always drawbacks. There's always pitfalls in anything you're trying to do that's significant. You need to pick yourself up. I would say when you have doubts, at times you have to be careful not to let people show that. So you have to project optimism even when inside you may have some doubts and you may know that things are difficult. But pick yourself up, be resilient, be enthusiastic, and be confident.
Wonderful, wonderful ideas. So those ideas that have resiliency, when you see one of your constituents persevering through an obstacle that you help motivate them, how does that make you feel?
That makes me feel tremendous. Yeah, absolutely. I love to see people progress. I love to see people feel like they are moving ahead, either in terms of their abilities within a particular role or advancing through the organization.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so a little bit away from the topic of leadership and a little bit more about leadership inspiration and kind of asking with regards to you personally. What steps regarding leadership do young professionals aspiring to be future leaders need to take to become prepared and successful, such as yourself?
Say good listening skills, which is not always easy to do. Sometimes I have to step back and force myself to listen and ask questions to draw people out. Um, that's an important attribute, I think.
Okay. So that's a great takeaway. Any other steps that they need as far as when they move up from a follower to a manager? Do they need to take a bunch of classes? Do you say they need maybe to emulate and kind of look at the different situations and be exposed to different situations?
Well, if possible, I think taking some organizational theory and motivational theory is important. Having one thing we haven't talked about is having empathy for people. Um, this is in any organization. At the end of the day, if you're a manager, you have to make tough decisions, and you know, treating people fairly is important. At the end of the day, you may have to make difficult decisions that influence people's lives, but you should always try to be fair because I think if your people see that you're trying to be fair, even in difficult times, they'll have respect for you and what you're trying to do.
So it's important to see things from other people's perspective and be empathetic with that.
Absolutely.
Understood. So that's great advice. Along those same lines of taking advice, the things that you mentioned that we could do, younger adults could do, younger professionals. Did you happen to take the advice of a leader that you admired, and did you follow in their footsteps, and how did that turn out?
Well, I recall one person that said something to me that there was a vice president, and it stuck with me. And at the end of the day, um, there's a lot of different ways to try to affect change within an organization, but the bottom line is whether you achieve the results or not. So there are all different styles out there, but at the end of the day, knowing whether they're effective is whether you achieve results, and that's what people get paid for in an organization like ours or in a non-financial organization. Getting to the goal, that's important. There's a lot of different ways to get there.
So you followed in his footsteps, and that seemed to turn out. Obviously, you're a successful leader now, and you followed his path development. So kind of along the same lines, some people believe leaders are born. We talked about all the development that it takes. And some people don't believe that emulation of practice really plays a bigger role in leadership and being a successful leader. But you're clearly a successful leader. So, but if I went out and asked people what they thought of you and if you were born to be a leader, what kind of responses do you think I would get?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I thought about this question. I know growing up, when I was in organizations like Boy Scouts, I went through different leadership roles. I was always drawn to that. And um, I don't know what that means that I just had an interest and an opportunity, or whether you're born into it. Really don't know the answer. But do I think that people can improve with on any level that they start at? Absolutely. I think so. I don't think it's entirely inbred. I think that you can develop skills to build on whatever your natural talents are.
So you would say that maybe an interest from a young age, some inherent interest that compels you toward leadership roles, really helps to get you into the leadership position, and then through development, you kind of learn your own style.
That's a good summary.
Okay, wonderful. So I would like to complete this interview by just summarizing. Um, and one question I'd just like to ask before we depart, in your opinion, what's been the greatest byproduct of your time as a leader? And are there any notable accomplishments that you are extremely proud of?
Well, um, this may not be the answer you're looking for, but I would say that I've moved through different levels of the organization and at the highest levels and back to intermediate levels. And I feel like at the end of the day, when I've tucked back in the organization, I've still had people's respect. And I think that to me, that was a sign that people felt I had integrity and that I was honest and that I wanted to always do the best. Um, and I feel most proud of that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I failed to cover that in this interview, but it's a great point. So I'd just like to thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I can definitely say I learned a lot about leadership, and I appreciate the opportunity to learn from the experiences and knowledge of a great leader such as yourself.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.